Hello everyone, this is Dr. Advocate Sheetal Babar. Today I shall be presenting a slideshow in which we shall be discussing about Muslim inheritance. Now Muslim inheritance, though we consider it as inheritance, is only result as succession. Now, why so? We need to see all of the slides and to understand what basically is Muslim inheritance and why do I state so. So let us move on to the next slide and find out firstly what are the sources of inheritance. There are four major sources of inheritance which also are sources basically for every another law or every another principle under Muslim law. Let us see the first one, Holy Quran. We don't need to discuss about a Holy Quran or Al Quran. This is one of the topmost, foremost and most significant source of Muslim law. Usually we say there is nothing beyond this holy book. So the very first source through which inheritance is derived from is Al-Quran or the Holy Quran or the holy book of Quran. Basically, when we read Quran, there is specifically mention of whatever we are going to understand in the further slides. Every single verse, every single word has been mentioned under Quran. Next is Sunnah. What is Sunnah? Sunnah is nothing but the practices or traditions which are accepted by Muhammad Prophet. Now, these traditions or these practices basically are nothing but the revelations of God or from God to Muhammad Prophet. Now, these revelations were accepted by all of the individuals following Muslim as a religion, and that is how we say these came up as traditions and practices. And Sunnah is nothing but everything which is in consonance with Al-Quran. They cannot be, as I stated earlier, beyond the holy book of Quran. And hence, I say Sunnah or Sunnat is nothing but the revelations by God to Muhammad Prophet about all those practices and traditions to be followed by all of the Muslims. The next one is Ijma. What is Ijma? Ijma is nothing but the opinions of or these practices which are opined by all the legal scholars. The acceptance of certain practices, certain traditions, certain customs, usages by these legal scholars is nothing but Ijma. Then what is Qiyas? In a very normal layman language, Qiyas is nothing but the applicability of whatever is present as earlier sources of law to the general circumstances or current circumstances or new circumstances. So Qiyas is nothing but the applicability of old traditional practices or law which are imbibed in Al-Quran to all the new or current circumstances. And all of these four comprises of sources of law of inheritance as well. Let us move on to the next slide and see what basically kinds of properties are recognized by Muslim inherited law or law of inheritance. Now, surprisingly, all of these kinds of properties which we see in this slide are not at all accepted by Muslim law. We say these are absolutely not categorized as different properties. All of these properties are definitely kinds of properties which definitely are considered under inheritance of Muslim or Muslim law of inheritance. However, they are not differentiated or classified as different while the law of inheritance is to be applied. So, movable property, immovable property, let it be a corporeal property or incorporeal property, tangible property, intangible property, the usufruct also, or the accumulation also, all of these basically are considered under one head, and that is property. So there is no difference of or rather classification of properties under Muslim law. Now, let us find out what are these principles of law of inheritance under Muslim law, or when we consider principles of Muslim inheritance, do we need to specially focus on certain points? Yes, we need to find out certain basic things which we say ultimately are playing a vital role while Muslim inheritance takes place. To understand Muslim inheritance, what we need to find out first is, because we are uttering word inheritance doesn't mean under Muslim law that this is the right by birth. So when we are calculating birthright, we here are in negation. Under Muslim inheritance, there is no birthright. On the contrary, under Hindu law, if a person takes birth in the family, we say he or she has his or her right respectively in the property, because that is the right by birth. It might increase with the deceased individuals of the family, or it may increase with the circumstances. So when we discuss birthright under Muslim law, I say that there is no right imbibed into a Muslim who takes birth or immediately after the birth. While when we talk about Muslim inheritance, the only incidence of applicability or coming into existence of Muslim inheritance is death of the propounder. That means if an individual takes birth in the Muslim family, by birth he doesn't acquire the inherited right, but he acquires those rights only after death of his or her ancestor. Second rule is rule of representation. So, rule of representation is also something we say is not applicable under Muslim law. So, rule of representation is not there, birthright is not there. What is rule of representation? Muslim law, on the contrary, as I say, doesn't accept rule of representation, while Hindu law accepts rule of representation. We have seen people who doesn't survive the ancestor, they are surviving individuals or legal heir of the predeceased to the ancestor. We say represents or jumps into the shoes of parent and receive the property. So rule of representation is, if anyone didn't survive the ancestor or the propositors, then we say his or her legal heir will come into the scenario. That is how we say representation. So say for example, A is the one who is deceased. So here we are considering generally under Hindu law representation. How it happens? A is deceased. He has two sons, B and C. C is already predeceased, that means he didn't survive A. But C is survived by his two sons, that is D and E. In this case, we make rule of representation applicable here, and we say even if C is predeceased to A, we shall allot his share fictiously upon him, and then same share shall be further distributed among his children, which is no under Muslim law. Because there are two concepts which we consider under Muslim law, or rather under any of the other laws, which we say rule of distribution per capita, and second is rule of distribution per sturds. Now what is this rule of per capita or rule of distribution per capita? That is per head. So the property is distributed amongst those who are surviving the ancestor. That means what? They can be individuals from different generations, but they being surviving, we say they all together shall receive the property equally, which is one of the basic principles of Muslim law. While considering first terms, we say this is where we have a generational concept. We make one branch each or one generation each while distributing the property. So here, when we considering per capita, we are more focused on the Sunni law. And when we considering per starbs, we are more focused on Shia law. How? We shall be definitely discussing this in our later slides. Right now, what is per capita? Which we say is as per head, as per individuals, maybe from different generations. We make them as being the survivors, receiver of the property equivalently. That means their share is equal. Or rather, we don't exclude them just because they are from the different generation. And what do we mean by per starbs? Per starbs is per generation. We take the distribution rule as per the stirp or as per the generation, and not as per the individuals who are surviving from different generation. So, rule of representation, I would not say is absolutely no under Muslim law, but basically while applying the general laws, it is no for Muslim inheritance. Next, we talk about rule of propinquity. What is this rule of propinquity? Propinquity is something which is the relation, or rather the concept of relation in between the propositus or the ancestor who is predeceased with an individual who has a remote relation. So might be we have discussed this under Hindu law or discussions under Hindu law. Consanguinity also under Indian Succession Act. Consanguinity has been defined. We have discussed this. Kindred is something which is discussed already under Indian Succession Act. Same is the concept applicable here when we're discussing propinquity. Propinquity is whatever the remotest of remote relation of an individual to this deceased individual might be. He is supposed to be in propinquity with the deceased individual, deceased Muslim, or the propositus or the propounder. So this is how we discuss rule of propinquity, which is definitely one of the principles of Muslim inheritance. Because once we will be discussing about the sharers, residuaries, or rather the kindreds, or in a layman language, receivers of the property, we shall understand how this rule of propinquity is applicable. And lastly, we discuss about rule of Rad and Aul. This is nothing but the principle of increase in the share and decrease in the share, or rather in an alternate format. When we discuss Rad, we're talking about decline in the share, and Aul is increase in the share. And that is incidental, which we shall be discussing later on, as to due to presence or survival of someone, some another's share either is increased or is decreased. So this is principle, or these are the principles of Muslim inheritance. Now let us see as to who are these persons who are succeeding to the property of a Muslim. Now, when we say inheritance which only happens on death of an individual who is following Muslim religion, we talking or succeeding the property, there needs to be a category of individuals. Now, when it comes to Hindu law, we have discussed Schedule 1, 2, Class 1 heir, Class 2 heir, the kindreds, etc. Under Indian Succession Act also we have specified certain category of individuals and Class 2, Schedule 2 of Indian Succession Act. These are the categories respectively to the laws which we make applicable. Here we have in general three categories which we consider as receivers of the property. The first and the foremost are the sharers. If there are no sharers, then we turn on to the residuaries. The residuaries are the one usually sometimes the sharers receive their share and the property yet is to be distributed. So the property might not go back to the sharers but sometimes to the residuaries also. If there are no sharers and residuaries, the property might go to the kindreds. This is how rule of propinquity we make applicable. So rather discussing who gets what in this slide, we see there are three receivers. First is sharer, second is residuary, and third category is kindred. Now let us discuss sharers in context to Sunni as a different law and Shia as a different law of inheritance. Now we know who are the sharers. Sharers are the receivers of the property who have priority over all other two kinds of sharers. Now let me also make it very clear at this point of time that when it comes to Sunni, we have three kinds of receivers of the property. First is sharer, second is residuary, and third is distant kindred. While Shias do have only two categories as the receiver of the property. First is sharer and second is residuaries. It hardly bothers about the distance kindred. There are reasons for that because while calculating the sharers and the residuaries, they probably is focus on certain individuals, because in the earlier slide I have made a mention that when it comes to Shia inheritance, which we definitely shall be discussing in a separate law of inheritance as a lecture, Shia is the sect of Muslim which do follow rule of representation while accepting distribution of property as per sterbs. How we least bothered or concerned right now in this session because we're just understanding the basic principles of law of inheritance. While in another session, discussions and lecture, I shall be discussing more in depth about law of inheritance and principles of actual distribution to the sharers, residuaries under Shia law. Right now, um, in context to what are the sharers, we have under Sunni law 12 sharers, least of 12 as sharers, while under Shia law we have only 9. Let us find out what all are these 12 and 9 respective sharers. Under Sunni law, father, grandfather, husband, wife, mother, grandmother, daughter, son's daughter, uterine brother, uterine sister, full sister, and consanguine sister are the one who are the sharers and in priority to all others. While we enlist the sharers under Shia law, we have only 9. With those husband, wife, father, mother, daughter, uterine brother, uterine sister, full sister, and consanguine sister. So who all are those who are not present in Shia sharers? The first one is grandfather, second one is grandmother, and third is son's daughter. So these are three sharers who are not accepted as sharers under Shia law. Let us move on to the concept of what is residuary or who are these residuaries. Here also we have a difference in between acceptance of law of inheritance under Sunni law and acceptance of Shia law as per the rules of distribution of the property amongst residuaries. Now here under Sunni law we have 4 categories And under these categories, we have respective individuals who are considered as residuaries. Were those? The first category is descendants, under which we have son and son's son. HLS means half low so ever. So we are not bound by prohibited degrees or degrees of generations to be calculated for inheritance, which we have already seen under Hindu law. Your son and son's son how low soever in generations. So it might be son, 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 and so on. Second category is ascendants, father and true grandfather, how high soever. The concept of true grandfather we shall be discussing in the session or lecture when we discuss rule of inheritance or distribution of property under Sunni law. Right now, father and true grandfather, how high soever, is the second category. So it can be father, grandfather, grandfather's father, grandfather's grandfather, how high soever. Next category is descendants of father. So full brother, full sister. Now these are descendants of father, collateral relations to the deceased. Full brother of whom? Not the father. Because here we're talking about descendants of father. So father's descendant is full brother of the deceased. That means father's son. Here we're talking about full sister of the deceased. That means father's daughter. Then consanguine brothers, consanguine sisters, full brother's son, consanguine brother's son, consanguine brother's son's son is the category considered under descendants of father. Next is descendants of true grandfather, how high soever. So how high soever grandfather's descendants we are discussing. Full paternal uncle of the deceased. Consanguine paternal uncle, full paternal uncle's son will be his cousin. Consanguine paternal uncle's son, full paternal uncle's son's son, a nephew. Consanguine paternal uncle's son's son, male descendants of more remote true grandfather. These are all the category of individuals considered as residuary under Sunni law. Shia law is quite simple in this context. It says all the heirs other than the sharers are residuaries because Shia law considers only two categories of individuals as the receiver. One is sharer and others are the residuaries, while Sunni law considers three categories of individuals as receivers. Those are sharers, residuaries, and distant kindred. Now, in our next session, we individually shall be discussing separately what are the laws and principles to be applied for distribution of property under Sunni Muslim law or Muslim Sunni law. And in a separate session, we shall be discussing what are the rules to be applied for distribution of the property under Muslim Sharia law. So thank you so much for listening.